We're talking today with Michael Hadding of Kentwood, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, so Mike, let's begin at the beginning. Where and when were you born?
Okay. Believe it or not, Grand Rapids, Michigan, what used to be Butterworth Hospital, September 21st, 1954. So,
all right. And did you grow up in Grand Rapids?
Yep, I grew up in the Northview School District. I used my mother's address through my entire military career, so I had a stable foundation anchor point.
You did say your mother's address, right, rather than just mother's dress.
Address, yes.
Yeah, because it sounded like dress, and I was beginning to wonder how the Corporal Klinger, I mean, that might not work. Okay. Now, what did your family do for a living when you were a kid?
My father worked at Lear Sigler,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother worked at General Motors. They eventually got a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in a wonderful, as an adult, looking back at my
Yeah.
childhood, I grew up in a wonderful school system with
Mm-hmm.
all the assets you can have. I wanted for nothing throughout my entire life. I had a proper education, graduated, middle of the class, nothing special.
Okay.
Not a very good athlete either. Went to Ferris State College for a year. Thought I was going to be an accountant and found out I don't like that at all. It was nothing but busy work. I worked for Spartan Warehouse for a year and a half. During that time, I was a skydiver, if you can believe that.
Okay.
Scuba diver and runner. And
At what point did you start skydiving?
I started skydiving in college.
Okay.
And before that, I was given an opportunity. There was the Boy Scout Explorer program at the time, and they came up with a plan to become a pilot. If you have an airplane, it's cheaper to learn to be a pilot. Somebody donated an airplane. So I spent my sophomore, junior, and senior year rebuilding a 1938 Stetson 10A aircraft along with another group of people and adults, so I know an aircraft from the ground up. I've never seen it fly though, but it's out there.
All right.
So looking back at it as an adult, I was given opportunities. When I skydived, well, before I skydived, I always had a thing of you join the military. I did not know at the time the horrors of what the military life was. I just thought, McHale's Navy, F Troop, the fun, nobody gets injured in war, it's all clean, cut and clean.
So you were sort of just young enough that like your classmates and schoolmates were not going over to Vietnam or things like that.
That is correct. The class of 72, some of our classmates faced the draft, but being in high school, they were not going to be taken.
Yeah.
So they take it. And then in 73, they went with the all-volunteer force. The draft dropped off dramatically.
Right.
And
yeah, so your cadre was not one that was affected by that. So you could still then think of it with what was on 1960s television.
yes.
Okay.
In skydiving, I met my share of ex-military. And they were positive about the military. Oh, you're going to join the military. Now, in college, I looked at Marine Corps ROTC. The financial cost to me, I'd figured out to 18 years of my life to get a college education, that wasn't worth it. The Navy didn't quite work out. The Army, being a parachute rigger, my friend saying you want to be a better parachute rigger, join the Army. That didn't work out, and by sheer chance, the Air Force was the last chance to join, and they're going, we need people, you're signed up.
Yeah, it would seem to me with some of your background, the Air Force would almost seem like the obvious first choice.
Yes, you're right, and as an adult looking back, it was the proper choice. Okay.
Okay, so when do you actually join the Air Force?
I joined the Air Force in May of 1975, and actually the date's important to May 75, because by 5 days I'm considered a Vietnam era vet, where most people say, no, I'm not a Vietnam vet, I'm an era vet. I make sure to tell that because I have met true Vietnam vets, and I don't fall into that category.
All right, so where do you go for basic training?
And that was lucky, Lackland Air Force Base, Texas. And once again, looking back as an adult, thank you for putting in air conditioning barracks, because I went from snow in Michigan to 90-degree heat, and thank goodness for
May in San Antonio is going to be hot.
yes, that's all there is.
Okay. So what did the training consist of?
6 weeks of basic military training. It's just that. They're looking back, going, they're categorizing you. They're putting you into pegs. They're seeing what career field you wanted to go in. I wanted to go in as a parachute rigger. I was a civilian FAA parachute rigger, so I thought this would help and get through 6 weeks of training. Now, an interesting note, looking back as an adult. When you arrive at basic military training, they bring you in at night to disorient you, so they can control you better. We visited a German POW camp in Kansas on our travels. And they deliberately brought the Germans into that camp in the daylight. They wanted to show them the vast distance between the train station to the POW camp, 15 miles of nothing but Kansas, and to tell them, okay, there's one strand of barbed wire. You want to escape? Go ahead. You're not going to get far.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you said they bring you in at night.
They bring you in.
And then what do they do in those first couple of days?
Basically, just to get you to line up and march and accept the fact, and I'm going to key in the word, accept the fact that it's a person in charge. They don't have to slap you. They do raise their voice. They do let you know that they are in charge and you're going to follow the instructions, but there's no need for physical violence or anything like that.
Well, it is the Air Force.
Yes, it is the Air Force. Yes, you're measured for uniforms. Yes, you take tests. Yes, you get lots of shots. It's basic military training. You're not going to come out warriors or anything else.
Do they do close order drill and marching
Constantly.
and stuff?
It's a constant battle. And once again, the way they designed the barracks were 2 stories up. Underneath was a concrete pad in the shade, so you could drill in the shade and not get exposed to the hot Texas sun.
Wow.
For your time down there. Yes, people could not understand what they were in for. People did try to quit. Looking back at the skill of the drill instructors, they were psych majors. They were looking for certain classes of people. They were looking for the troublemakers. They were looking for the person who might fail and try to commit suicide. They were very observant of the people they had. Now, you didn't notice that as a basic military training, but later on in life you see that.
Okay. And then how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to that?
I'm going to use the word easy. You were just given instructions.
Okay.
Follow the instructions. It's nothing spectacular. And I found ways to get private time. For example, everybody wants to go to chapel call on Sunday because at the at your religious service, you're not being yelled at. I stayed and did dorm guard at the barracks, so I had 2 hours of absolute quiet time. So I learned how to adjust the system to make it to my advantages.
Okay. And so this basically just goes for 6 weeks. So
That's
it's really
6 weeks.
Short. Okay. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, now what happens?
Most people have a job or a career field, and that's where I went to Chanute Air Force Base, Illinois. And there they have over 200 different schools. Now mine was parachute rigging, but 12-week-long school. But people go there to become jet engine mechanics or Minuteman missile maintainers. So it's a giant college campus, and later on you discover that's constantly rotating people in to learn a craft, and then they will go from there to their next base. My 12 weeks at Chanute turned into 6 months at Chanute because I went home on leave and broke my arm in a parachuting accident. Oh. So you can't pack parachutes with a broken arm, so you're just left there.
So did they just have you stay home until it healed?
No,
or
I
you come
was
back to the base?
I was on the base the whole time. They have, because it wasn't service connected or anything, and yes, you have to make the formations. Yes, we can find work for you to do. You're just not going to be in the parachute rigging school.
Okay, so what do they have you do while you're waiting?
Someone has to organize the new people who are coming in and march them to chow and march them to classes, and someone has to take classes to learn how to do those things. At that time, looking back at it, at that time, 1975, we were still coming out of a mindset of an endless manpower supply. Remember, we had a draft going on. The militaries were fat with people, and they were creative with make-work projects because we have an excess of people, and you just can't have them standing around doing nothing. You got to make work for them. So, doing the classes, marching the troops, going to chow, they end up with details. I mean, one of the nasty details was, go rake leaves. Okay, the leaves are all raked up. Well, rake them again. Literally make work. Not that bad, okay? In many ways, it had a start time, it had an end time. You lived in the barracks. The weekends were kind of your own. It was minor. I mean,
was there anything to do in Rantoul, Illinois?
not so much Rantoul, but the base had everything you can imagine. The base is a small city, from theaters to bowling alleys. I'll say to the Airmen's Club, which I could care less about. There was always things to do. I even had a roommate who had his private pilot's license. They had an aero club. Here he is, a trainee learning a craft. In his case, was sheet metal repair. And he would go flying on the weekends at some dirt cheap rate because they had a private airport there.
Okay, so it's a reasonable enough job in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Okay, so once you finally, then you, I guess describe a little bit what a parachute rigger actually does.
Parachute rigger packs and maintains parachutes and also parts of the ejection system. And this includes not only the parachutes for personal use, to say an ejection seat, but for airborne troops, cargo, deacceleration parachutes, which is that parachute you see behind an airplane which slows the landing roll down. And someone has to inspect them, pack them, maintain them. Now, a comment I'll make is, if you have a parachute used like in an ejection seat, and if it's used, everything is condemned afterwards because they don't know how much stress has been put on it. But if you have a parachute used for paratroops, they knew exactly how much stress is on, and those are good for like 100 jumps, so someone has to pack and maintain them. When parachutes used to be made out of natural fabrics, cotton, linen, inspections were very critical because things could rot. Now that's nylon, it's not as time intensive, but still most parachutes are open and inspected every 120 days, and the components are checked and brought up to speed. In some ways, it's a repetitive, mundane job, and on the other hand, I have the records. I have 5 saves to my credit. That means 5 times a parachute has been used in an emergency situation, and that crew member is, Now, whether I did the wonderful work or I'm just following the instructions of packing the parachute, but it's my name signed on the book.
That's right.
Like that.
Yeah,
So
and you didn't screw up.
No.
So, all right. Okay. So how long does once you actually get to do the school, how long do you actually spend doing that training? Was that 12 weeks?
Yeah, about 12 weeks at that time. It was
All
about
right.
12 weeks.
And then where do you get sent next?
My first base was Offutt Air Force Base, Omaha, Nebraska. And at that time, it was SAC headquarters, Strategic Air Command. At that time in history, we had nuclear, and I do not mince the word, the capability of wiping out the world, nuclear weapons controlled from that base. Now, I'm a parachute rigger because there's airplanes there. I have nothing to do with the nukes or anything else. But because it's a headquarters, it had like 27 generals on the base. Normally a base has 1 general, 20 because of all the command and control. So me being a one-striper, nobody bothered me because the power structure was someplace else and all I did was go to work, pack parachutes. I had some non-commissioned officers in charge of me who ensured that I learned to do it perfectly. Okay, and they would not accept anything less, and that paid off later on in the career. And for the most part, it was an 8 to 5 job. You show up at work, you pack parachutes. One time I asked my boss, lots of stripes on his sleeves, and I got 1.
Yeah.
I said, can I get a key to the shop so I can come in and use the sewing machine to sew the stripes on my uniform? Because you're taught how to use the sewing machine. He says, I want a fresh cup of coffee in the morning. I looked at me, he says, if there's a fresh cup of coffee on my desk in the morning, I'll get you a key to come in and sew your stripes on. And I said, that's a good deal to me. So he got me a key to the shop, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, they started at 7:30. At 6 o'clock, I was in there making his coffee, and he got his hot cup of coffee, and I got my key to the shop to sew my stripes on.
Okay.
So I learned that there was, you work together with each other.
Didn't you have a stripe to begin with?
Yeah, I had one when I was.
But then you become a or the equivalent of a PFC or whatever.
Yeah,
so you get.
yeah.
You
You
get
start out as
stripe.
an E1,
Yeah. Then
no stripe. E2, one stripe.
Right.
E3.
Yeah. Okay.
Three
So,
stripe.
so yeah. Now, did you have to keep giving him coffee, or was that just a
No, that was continuous, because also I found out there was the GI Bill, and I could start taking college classes.
Okay.
And he says, well, if you want to take your college classes
Mhm.
at noon during your lunch hour, I don't have a problem with that, but as long as, oh, by the way, the air conditioning unit needs to be turned on in the whole building, and it was a complicated process, it wasn't just simple. Well, if it's up and working, I guess you can have your lunch hour and go take college classes. So I learned real quick that there was some favors that could be made there. Now, also while I was there, I was given opportunities. For imagine, the SAC Strategic Air Command Headquarters is a bunker buried in front of the building. 3 stories down, bunker. How do you get a tour on that? You simply walk over there, put your ID card down, sign up on the tour, and when they're taking a civilian group through, you show and you go in with the civilian group. So I got to take 2 tours of the SAC Command Headquarters. We're talking serious stuff. Also, too, the person in charge of the Strategic Air Command, SAC, person, 4-star general, he has his own personal airplane, but it has to also fly tanker missions to justify it. So here's this nice VIP interior aircraft, and it's got a boom in the back, and they refill aircraft. How do I get a ride on that? Go down there, sign up. So I got to fly some tanker missions as, just the passenger. Now, to tell you the changings of the times, we had a female in the shop, Rebecca, and at that time in '75, females were rare in the Air Force. Oh, she got to fly a tanker mission. Now, you're just an observer. They coached her on what to say. So here, coming over the radio for the upcoming planes to refuel, is a female voice on the Boomers channel. And of course, they're going like, what in the world there are?
I don't know. About how many women do you think were on the base?
At that time, of 5,000 on the base, I'd say 200 women. I made a comment in my notes saying when I went in '75, it was less than 1% female, just very little. And by the time I got out in '95, 14 to 18% female. And I'll use the word dovetail. People say, well, they're better or they're worse. Nope, they're the same as men. You've got very good people, you've got mediocre people. If you stacked them up, it's all the same. I've worked for a variety of females. I have females work for me. I've had males I could care less about. I've had females I could care less about. So there's nothing sexist about it. It was just there were no females at that time. It was a male organization.
All right. And then how long do you stay in Omaha? That
was for 1.5 years. And then by sheer chance, you got orders to Germany. And here, now remember, I'm a 2-striper by then, but this base, everybody on the base knew I was going to Germany. I mean, I've got people with, stuff on their collars going, Airman Hadding, you're going to Germany. You're going to have a wonderful time. Airman Hadding, I understand you're going to Germany. You need to visit this and this when you get to Germany. And I'm going like, oh, Airman Hadding, you coming over to the house for dinner on Friday? I want to show you my slides from Germany. I had such positive feedback that I'm going to Germany because all these people are going, you're going to Germany. You're going to have a wonderful tour. And the joke was when I got to Germany and got to the barracks, it was a universal cry of, this place sucks. I mean, just universal. And I went, you can't have such a difference. And I found the people who enjoyed Germany. So Germany turned from a 2 to a 3-year tour. I enjoyed the whole experience over there.
All right. So when do you get to Germany?
In September of '77.
Okay. And then where were you based?
Simbach Air Base, West Germany. Now, if you got to know Germany, it's about 20 kilometers from K-Town, about 25 kilometers from Ramstein. It's a small base. And in fact, with the pulling out of Germany that our forces have currently done, it's been returned to nature. If you look at the aerial maps, they've literally taken all the buildings out and everything else and have restored the whole land to nature.
Okay. So what was actually based there in terms of aircraft or support services?
Yeah. There was an aircraft called an OV-10, observation aircraft. Their job was to fly around the battlefield, look for targets, mark the targets for a plane carrying bombs to drop on the target. And we had some helicopters there. And the helicopters, the joke was, what's a CH-53 formation, two in the air at the same time, that they were not prone for being mechanically reliable aircraft. The ejection seat, and on that aircraft we took care of the ejection seat, was unique to that aircraft. So there was nothing in the school that taught you anything about that particular.
That's for the OV-10?
That OV-10. So, of course, once you arrive, now everybody else knows how to pack it, and now you get the books out and you learn how to pack that particular parachute. So it was a unique system. For my career, there was a wonderful opportunity at that time, because I've started to figure out, you know, you get rank, you get more money, you get more. I was in parachute rigging. There was a second career field called fabric and rubber specialists. They took care of the life raft, escape slides, and fabric products. The military decided to combine them together into one career field. So there would be an opportunity on the next testing cycle that part of the test would not be incorporated because two different career fields. So I only had half the material to study, so I used my college skills, studied, and got the next stripe. And then when they combined the two career fields together, suddenly you had a volume of information you had to learn. Simbach, I come to find out later on, was a good place to get that knowledge.
Okay.
Yes. And that led me to the reason of why I wanted to become a parachute rigger instructor. Remember, that's a combined career field now, was if I want to make more stripes, I need to know both careers. The best way to learn both careers is to teach it. So I applied for a special duty assignment to be an instructor at Chanute, because I figured if I'm teaching it, I'll know it. If I know it, I can make more rank.
Okay. Well, did you do that after your tour in Germany?
That was after the tour, but in the tour in Germany, that's when I was learning.
All right. Okay. So what was, you said so when you first get to Germany and people say this is a bad place.
Oh, yeah.
What did they not like about it?
They didn't get off the base.
Okay.
They played, we called stuck. You know, go to work, sit in the barracks, go to the club, drink beer, sit back in the barracks. And there was opportunities that I could not believe. The rec center, every Saturday had a $10 tour going someplace. We're going to a castle, we're going to the zoo, we're going to, for $10, how can you go wrong with, you know, even if it's something you may not like. Also too, I met up with people who had been there on previous tours who loved it. Every base I went to, some family adopted me. So my family is called the Berdans. He was a full colonel. He was outside my chain of command. They're still dear friends. You know, I'm included in the birthday pictures and everything else. And they had been there before. They loved the country, and it was, we're doing this weekend, and we're doing this weekend, and it was, and you're invited along. This is how personable the man was. Christmas is coming, which is a big deal in the military. Mike, he said to one of our other person, is Kathy was her name, and said, Kathy, you're coming up to the house for dinner. Well, my roommate doesn't have any place to go. Then you invite her too. And Mrs. Berdan knew that the colonel would be, you know, bringing a few extra people to, you know, Christmas dinner and things like that. So there was a great deal of camaraderie that happened there.
Okay. And did you kind of travel farther afield when you got time off? I mean, did you go to other countries or other parts of Germany?
That was easy. I learned to ski in Germany. Oh, we have a Bavarian ski package. And now I could drive there because I had a car, but they had it set up. You could arrive by train, they'll pick you up there. You can come there with nothing but your wallet, and they'll outfit you with clothing and a ski instructor and dirt cheap. I mean, you know, anybody could afford it. You know, just give up beer drinking for a month and you could go to these ski fest type things. And it led to other opportunities. At that moment in time, there was a project, and Operation Partnership. The purpose was to integrate American military forces with German military forces. Now, I'm not Army, okay? I'm Air Force. We don't get in the mud. You know, we're not dirty. Hey, there's a German panzer unit in the north of Germany. You get to go, if you would like to go, you could go up there. And I'm going, I mean, you know, I'm way down on the total. You want to go? We got a slot for you. Go. So I go up to a German panzer unit and train with them for a week. Now, I didn't actually drive tanks. There was, you know, projects you had to learn. Our class picture has German, Belgian, American Army Reserve, and one blue suitor in the picture. Around the table, we're sitting, speaking German, French, Flemish, and Russian, because half of them were Russian translators. And you're given an opportunity like that. Also, they could take me up on the east-west German border, which at that time was off limits to American troops. You had to be escorted. You couldn't go up there. You had to be escorted. And once you see the border, you realize that, shit, this is very, very real. But, oh, hey, you want to go do that? Hey.
Yeah, well, sort of on a practical level, the two sides had sort of had a kind of a modus vivendi. Nobody really wanted to start World War III.
That is correct.
But at the same time, I mean, did you have, while you were there alerts or things like
yes.
that you went through?
It was a constant, the Russians are on the other side. You know, we have to be prepared to launch so many aircraft missions within a certain period of time to counter that. So of course it would, 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody get up and get out of the bed, and and here's a joke, but you got to make your bed. We want to launch aircraft, but first make your bed. The war could never have started if we never made our beds. Looking back on it too, things that went on in the background that you didn't realize as an adult, but some of the exercises, they led to the projection that we were not going to survive. We were going to lose that many aircraft. Yeah. And that actually started the concept of stealth technology, 20 years in the future, but it came about with, we're losing so many aircraft through attrition and battle losses that we cannot sustain this going on. Of course, you didn't see that classified information at that time in your career. You only put it together by bits and pieces later on in your career too. But Germany was wonderful. I got to go to Oktoberfest, because when you have a full colonel who's in your group, he can get officers' quarters in Munich, which is pronounced München, right in the middle of Oktoberfest, and since you're in that group, you get to stay there too.
All right. Is there any other particular distinctive memories you've got from that tour in Germany before we move on?
Other than when I say the Berdans adopted me, which helped many things. It was wonderful, okay? That's all there was to it. Yes, it was cold, it was wet, it was, miserable at times, but, you could be cold and wet someplace else.
I guess, how did the German civilians seem to treat the Americans?
At that point in '77, there were still ones who felt that after the war we did not push their nose into it. And that's a quote, okay, you lost, but we don't have to say you lost. Any talk of Nazism, of course, was absolutely forbidden. We were still on the lookout for unexploded munitions still left over from World War II, too. I was a cross-country runner at that time. If you believe this body ever ran 10 and 20-kilometer races, but so we were in the woods. I was impressed with the cleanliness of the country. I was impressed with the friendliness. I had a wonderful tour there, and but so many people hated it.
All right. Yeah. But you made use of it.
Oh,
so
yes.
It was. Okay. So from there you go to Chanute again.
And at Chanute, you're an instructor now, so you're not a student. So you're permanent party on the base, and your job is to instruct students. Remember, there's almost 200 schools there. You're just one of the 200 schools. They send you through several weeks of learning to be an instructor. I mean, they videotape you. They critique you in front of a class. They get you to talk about your career fields and other things. And in your class, you have 12 other people who are other career fields. So you get to learn what they do for a job because they're talking about their specialty. And then in the classroom, once again, you're graded, you're observed, you're watched. You're not given a full control of a class. But pretty soon you start getting 6 students at a time. The parachute rigging school is an incredibly small school. We graduate 80 to 100 people in the course of a year. Compared to jet engine school, which puts out thousands of people a year, the parachute school is a very small school. You have them for 5 to 10 days worth of a block of instruction to learn a specific item. You get to know these airmen. You know, they got no stripes on their sleeves very personally because there's 1-to-6 ratio. You're teaching them a skill.
When you're doing that, is a lot of it hands-on? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's almost
physically working with the
yeah, it's
parachute?
almost hands-on, yes. Airing a parachute takes a 20-foot long table by 3 feet wide. So you're doing a lot of walking as you're walking up and down the table and teaching them about the parachutes. Also, you're teaching them about inflatable life rafts, the escape slides, life rafts, life preservers, sewing machine maintenance. For example, when I was in the military, this is a sample of the stuff that I made up right here, this simple ID holder. And you notice the tape seams and so forth. Well, at that time, the military ID card was larger than it is today, and it wouldn't fit in any standard size. Well, I says, well, why don't I make one big enough that will fit both your meal card, which would go on that side, and your ID card on this side, and would fit. It's sloppy in here because it's a smaller size. I made these up by the thousands and handed them out. You know, there'd be a brand new trainee coming in, and you know he's got his orientation, and I'd be handing out, of course, obviously an OD green, and you know, not fancy like this, and they'd be going, oh, that's neat. Now when I go to the dining facility, I just open it like this, and I get my meal. And of course, then everybody else in the where they live, the barracks, because there's other schools there, go, well, where'd you get that? Well, Sergeant Hadding got it for me. Well, can you ask Sergeant Hadding to get me one too? And so they had something to trade with, and so they...
So you're learning that side of the system too?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, I do have a great deal of sympathy towards trainees. Yes, they're there. They have to learn something new. Yes, they have to have discipline. Yes, they're going to learn it. There's no ands, if, or buts. But I don't have to be mad at me. I don't have to be angry at you or anything else. For example, Christmas. Everybody gets leave at Christmas, so everybody gets to go home. The whole base vanishes at Christmas. 3,000 students vanish in a 12-hour period. And you're not going to get any training out of them leading up to that time they're actually going to leave. So we put on a Christmas party. I mean, we got the tables. And so you can't do that with 1,000 students in a class, but in our class we maybe have a total of 40 students all across. And you got to know all your trainees. Years later, you meet them in other parts of the world, and you know, oh, we remember you, Sergeant Hadding, yes. And that was always good.
Okay. So how long did you stay in Rantoul?
I stayed there for 4.5 years.
Okay.
And I got to the point where I made the rank because I was teaching it. I was learning it. Now, as a joke, when you're teaching, you have written tests you give. So there's a whole procedure for controlling the test and validating test questions and percentages. And all the master tests are secured. You know, you just don't leave them out. But you have access to them. So there we go, touching the mic. So to study for my promotion test, I went and reviewed all those tests. 10 blocks worth of tests, 3 tests per block, 30 tests. Darn. All the answers to the professional test I had to take were in the test we gave to the students. So, bam, I got another stripe, you know, earned another stripe. About that point there, I decided that parachute rigging is fun, but I'm just teaching. So I wanted to expand, and I decided to go into a career field called disaster preparedness. And at the time, it could be nuclear, biological, chemical warfare defense, or planning for natural disasters. You work within the command structure to prepare. So I asked to go to the school, got approval, So when I left Chanute, I went to Denver for 12 weeks of school in disaster preparedness. And then from there I went to Del Rio, Texas. And Del Rio, once again, was a interesting and wonderful opportunity. Disaster preparedness had to brief everybody on the floods in Texas and how to handle it, and on the insects and snakes in Texas and tornadoes and things like that along with. And what I didn't realize at the time was the uniqueness of Texas. We had a secondary job of ground search and rescue because it was a training base where pilots flew. So the Border Patrol came in and trained us on how to track. The National Park Service came in and trained us how to behave on mountains. I mean, we can get a injured person out of any terrain. We had a vehicle, a mobile command, which was a true mobile command post. We had enough radio equipment on there we could contact anybody. When we did lose a plane one time, everything worked properly. We were able to have multiple. We literally had, because of that plane crash, we literally had networks set up across almost half of the United States monitoring our truck until we were able to stabilize the situation, and then we could bring everything. But that's how much resources came in just to that truck to protect that item. Now, here's a funny story. It's a training base. A lieutenant, a new officer, is coming in. He'll be there for a year. He's going to learn to become a pilot. The first ride they have in an aircraft is called a dollar ride. The instructor pilot puts the plane through its maximum envelope to tell the student, don't go beyond this because you'll crash, type thing. So they're on their second aircraft. They're 6 months into the training. They're flying the aircraft. The instructor pilot says, get off the yoke, which means get your hand off the controls. The student's response says, I'm not on the yoke. The next response was eject, eject, eject. Something mechanical had failed, and they ejected. No warning, no mayday cry, nothing like that. Suddenly, they're missing an aircraft. Well, the Border Patrol was the one that picked up on it. One of their ground sensors went off, saying, oh, that's unusual. Why do we have a ground sensor going off out there? Well, dispatch one of our aircraft to go look. Aircraft's puttering along out there. Looks out, sees a column of smoke. Oh, shit, something's bad. Send the helicopter. Helicopter's faster than the aircraft. Helicopter going out there, and, like, oh, shit, and he's looking at the ground, and it was textbook perfect setup for surviving, to notify people. The parachute was laid out properly, the flares were out, the mirrors were out, textbook. And they went, damn, the base is having a drill, which they weren't. And of course, the helicopter sets down. The instructor pilot broke his leg on impact. The student pilot, is running around looking for something because the adrenaline's just running like anything. And he comes running out of the bush, and they pick him up. Now, my little part of this was, okay, we have a crash. Now we form our teams together. And you form everybody together because you don't know what you have. And I'm monitoring every radio frequency in the world. I get the word from the Border Patrol. We've recovered 2, one injured, 45 minutes to the hospital. Well, right then, you can shut down your response. You don't have to send out the mortuary people. You don't have to send out all these people because you've got 2 live pilots, which is the best thing in the world you could possibly have. And then you go through your recovery process. And let me tell you, the Border Patrol did not pay for any drinks at the Officers Club for some time to come there. They were welcomed with open arms. The joke is that the student pilot did not give the instructor a $1 bill that was signed. He found a 50-cent piece and gave him a 50-cent. Boy, he only got half a ride. It was his $1 ride, and he had to eject. So and the student pilot actually was sent on a mission to all these other bases to say, I survived an ejection, and I'm still in the pilot training program, and I still am expected to fly aircraft with ejection seats. So because pilots are fearful that if they eject, they may not have a career anymore. So Del Rio, a little dusty town that just flew an awful lot of aircraft, was a very interesting tour, and the people of Texas are friendly, and when a Texan makes a friend of you, you've got a friend for life. Let me tell you, they do not take calling you a friend lightly. And I spent 2.5 years there in Texas, and came up with orders to Lodges Field, the Azores.
Okay.
Which is a rock out in the middle of the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went there, their command truck had one radio with one channel, and I'm going like, well, what's the difference?
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was such a difference between what the mission was at different bases. The Azores was a boring place. I mean, it's windy. The temperature's the same all the time. I can't say you're stuck on the rock, but we were limited to 500 pounds that we could ship over because weight and rank.
Yeah.
And I went, well, what am I going to send? So I sent a fabric cutting table and my industrial sewing machine. By this time I had my own industrial sewing machine. And while I was over there, I sewed stripes on, and I banked my paycheck for 15 months. I was just in my barracks room, the little sign on the barracks room, you know, patches sewn onto your uniforms, and had a price, and everybody agreed to it. And of course, the chain of command knew. And gee, when the Boy Scout troops, when the zipper broke on their tent, did it get repaired? Yes. Was there a bill? No. So, you know, everybody walked away happy. A little side note, remember the ID card I showed you? At the time, the dependents, all the wives, had to have a Portuguese ID card and the military ID card, which fit that perfectly, but nobody had them. The ladies on the base, the wives club, put together a wonderful Christmas present for all the single people living in the barracks, delivered Christmas stockings to all of us. So, you know, some 800 Christmas stockings, you know, that, and I repaid by going there, and I had a whole box of these things, all different colors, and I said, well, the stipulation is the people in charge of the program, they get to pick up the best color they want. Everybody else gets, you know, the leftovers. And then after that, you know, they'd be in the car and they'd go up the gate because they had to show their ID to leave and come because it's a Portuguese air base. And, oh, you know Sergeant Addington. The Azores, I took a follow-on assignment to a place called K.I. Sawyer, Michigan. And then the reason for that was not because it's in Michigan, you know, oh, I want to be close to home. It was they were offering a 5-year controlled tour. 2.5 years at one place, 15 months at another place, that's hard on you with moving. If you could find a assignment where you could be there longer. And in my last month on the island, my orders got changed from K.I. Sawyer, Michigan to Castle Air Force Base, Texas, to Plattsburgh, New York, which I had a big smile on my face there, site of the Winter Olympics, and I was a skier, you know. And finally to Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. I served there for 2.5 more years as a disaster preparedness technician. I went back into the parachute career field because I realized there was not going to be any promotions in that old career field. And I went the opportunity to go back to being a parachute rigger, and now I'm actually running a shop. I have the experience to run the shop, which I went back, made another stripe, and kind of retired from there.
To back up just the Azores for a little bit. So was there a civilian population on that island?
Oh, yes. It's considered an archipelago of Portugal. So it's under the jurisdiction of Portugal, but it's kind of its own series of islands.
Right.
It's volcanic. It's windswept. There's rock walls every place to keep the soil from being blown away. So you clear your fields, build rock walls, and then the wind doesn't take away your soil. What was unique with my career field at that time, we were a backup location to a backup location for the space shuttle on certain missions. And so I pulled into disaster preparedness. We had the shuttle manuals. I mean, detailed fold out of every subsystem in the shuttle. And of course, never going to happen, but it was interesting reading of all the detail on the space shuttle program there. It was unique, okay?
Okay, but it's sort of, so but there were I mean, was there like a civilian town there? You
Oh,
had the
oh yeah, yeah,
farmers
yeah,
in
yeah,
town
yeah.
and
Oh, yeah,
that-
it was all civilian.
yeah.
The military stupidity of life. The base is owned by the Portuguese. It's a Portuguese
Yeah.
air base. The Air Force runs the base.
Mhm.
The Navy flies the planes that go in and out of there, and the Army is in charge of the tugboats of the port, so they run the ships. So
Okay.
the ships assigned there are run by the Army. The Navy flies the planes, and the Air Force takes care of the land part of the base.
Okay.
Yes, the military and all of its intelligence at times.
All right. Okay. I mean, but did you get to know the people there at all? Or?
Not really. I'll say personal problems. I took my college degrees. I taught my classes. I taught lifeguarding and swimming. I participated in activities, but I didn't leave the base all that much.
Okay. All right.
But in our office, we had a native. You know, she lived on the island. She was our secretary. So so I had the cultural connections. There was just no interest to leave the base.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So then Barksdale, that's your last assignment?
that's my last assignment.
All right. Now, while you was that, so were you there in '91 when the Gulf War happened?
Yes. And now we get into a personal note. I was in no hurry. The Gulf War is starting to build up. We're not even called upon yet because of the nature of their aircraft there. Other places to go. But everybody wants to go. I don't want to go. I'm thinking history. I'm thinking build-ups. I want to go someplace and live in a tent. No, I don't want to do that. So I did not have my hand up at all during the Gulf War. You want to go? Fine, fine. You know, it was just go. I don't care. I just did not want to go. To me, it was a matter of inconvenience, and also it was a matter of nothing was shooting at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into an excitement. This is how bad the stupidity went. We were not called, not our shop, but we were not called as a base to deploy any assets.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just in case we might have to deploy assets, they took people and put them on telephone standby. They had to be packed and ready to go within 2 hours. They could not be more than 10 minutes away from a landline phone. Well, after 2 or 3 days of sitting at home by the phone because you can't do anything because there's no cell phones, there's no beepers at that time, you know, they said, put me back to work. It's a lot more better than sitting at home doing nothing. And remember, nothing's even being called up for that particular aspect of it. Now, during the Gulf War, I can talk about it now, but it was kind of strange. We get a classified message. Now, everybody thinks military and secret. It doesn't happen that much. And because of past experiences, I was cleared. So this was actually walk into the skiff, get a paper message, ask what notes you can take off of it, and display the notes and leave. Now, this is highly unusual for a person of my rank and career field. So, I mean, this is like, wow, the whole 18 people in my shop are going, Sergeant Henning, you know, why you? And of course, up my chain of command was the same thing, why him? Then I found out later why it was me. And they needed a prototype built out of my fabric shop, which is something I was easily capable of doing. And I walked in my shop and I said, guys, I'd love to tell you what I'm making, okay? I'd love to. I can't. It involves my air crews. Remember, whoops, I did that again. Yeah. My air crews. Remember, I got saves out there. You know, air crews are personal to me.
Right.
I can't tell you. You guys are going to leave at 4:30 today. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to build the product. I'm going to then disassemble all supply notations of this and everything else. I will take the prototype. I will take the project back to what it was, and that'll be the end of it. And they reluctantly, because they're going like, what are you doing? Yeah. Come to find out 20 years later, then I find out from Time magazine what that project was. Reflective tape, which you wear on your clothing and belts and things like that. You don't wear in a combat zone. What they wanted was a piece of reflective tape, specifically colored and so forth, for the aircrew members. So if they ejected, they would display this as part of identification for friend or foe, because when you recover a downed pilot, you have to treat him as the enemy. He could be booby-trapped, or he could be at the center of an explosive device, or he could be the enemy ready to shoot you. So our air crews are taught to be completely submissive when they're being rescued. Do not try to help with the rescuers or anything like that. It was a piece of reflective tape. You would never display reflective tape on a battlefield, not the combatants, but the pilot would do that. It would be hidden every time else, and they would go, oh, that's part of our identification of friend or foe on that. And that's, you know, when I saw what they wanted. Now, I didn't mass produce them or anything. I got the prototypes out, and then they went, oh. And then when I say my crew member, that's their life and death right there of a little project that somebody wants, and yeah, I can do it, yeah. And remember, it was 20 years later that I found out, you know, what exactly it was. At the time, it was just make it, okay, you got it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so, and then you retire out of
That is correct.
And then,
now, remember, I had a uneventful career.
right.
When I made my last stripe, I had 15 years' time in service. I had already extended my contract to take me past 20 years. So the day I got the stripe, the day you're informed that you're going to make the next rank, I was read a letter of counseling. We think you cheated on the test. We don't think you're qualified for this rank. You are going to be given no responsibility with that rank. You are not going to get promoted any farther. Just plan on getting out at 20 years. And I'm at the 15-year mark. Now, once your pride, you settle your pride down a little bit. You know, I put a 5-year calendar on the side of my trailer, some very ambitious goals, and accomplished them over 5 years. Although you cannot give a senior non-com, which is what I was, demeaning task, there's always extra duties. You know, I can't clean the latrines, but I can control the team that cleans the latrine. Every job you could think of came to me. I was not bored at all for the next 5 years. I got opportunities to do all sorts of interesting things. And when the promotion list comes up, you know, every cycle, the next cycle I was the 3rd worst sergeant for promotion in the whole Air Force, and the next year I was the absolute bottom. I was the worst sergeant for promotion, and I'm still making the same pay, I'm still making the same career opportunities, I'm still going to get out at 20 years with a pension and medical, and so everything else, whatever you want to throw at me, I can't say I'm smiling, but
Now, had you wanted to, could you have challenged that assumption that you cheated or be retested?
it never went farther than that. It just, there's a piece of paper that says, but it never went farther than that. Now, the joke of the matter is, my last year in service, we're moving all one type of aircraft, a tanker aircraft, from Barksdale to McGuire, New Jersey. They're just moving the whole system. And they needed a specialist on that system. I'm the specialist. We would like to extend your contract 2 years. We'd like you to go to McGuire. I'm the worst in the Air Force, and you're telling me, no, I'm not going. And my last year in the service, I get a phone call. You need to send somebody to Turkey. Okay, give me a few minutes here. I command 18 people in the shop, or run 18 people, and you'd like to rotate your rotation so nobody gets stuck with the same thing. And 20 minutes later, they call me up. I said, it's not for 4 months. What's the hurry? And, well, I said, I guess I'm going to Turkey. Well, you've got stripes. We only need, 2 stripes going to Turkey. All you're going to do is pack parachutes. I says, what's wrong with that? I have to go to Turkey. And I get over to Turkey, and you're cross-referencing people because you're replacing a person. And the sergeant looks at me and goes, well, who are you? Master Sergeant Hadding, parachute rigger. I don't need any parachute riggers. Can I go home? No, I'll find a job for you, which he did. A wonderful job. And later on, you're sitting around with your equals in rank, and they go, what was the coding that brought you over here? Let me check that out. Oh, come to find out that computer code had vanished 2 years before. I was over there on a computer error.
Okay.
But they gave me a wonderful assignment over there. There was a shop called NDI, Non-Destructive Inspection Specialist. They look for flaws in materials using x-rays, dyes, ultrasound, and also they analyze oil samples looking for engine wear. Very technical career field. And they had a person over there who went from a very skilled technician to a supervisor. Well, he's a very skilled technician, not very good supervisor. I'm a good supervisor. You pair up with him. You show him how to be a supervisor. And first thing I do is get a 3-ring binder. That's empty pages. Okay, let's start taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
And my first question was, okay, what's the passcode to get onto your computer system? Oh, what's that for? Let me get you started here. And I had a wonderful, I didn't belittle him or anything because he was very skilled,
Yeah.
but he just needed things.
And what base were you on?
That was, God, boy, I'm going to have to think of that. It was on Incirlik Air Force Base, Adana, Turkey.
Okay.
And once again, opportunities. Remember my 5-year plan? One of them was to complete my 4-year college degree. I have a 4-year degree in business administration. Thank you, United States Air Force. They paid 90% of my tuition cost. So I'm in Turkey, and I'm taking electives at that time. So what better to take than Turkish history and customs and Middle Eastern politics? And I need a 5-day field trip for the Turkish class. Commander, can I? Yes, of course. You can take 5 days for your college class and go off with your professor into the Turkish countryside. So once again, opportunities. Were
Now, at that point in time,
Yeah.
Were they flying over northern Iraq?
Oh, yes. That was the mission of Incirlik had a permanent party base. I mean, people were there for 3 or 4 years. And we came in to backfill that for 90 days to 180 days. And they were flying Overwatch. So we were considered a combat zone. We were nowhere near the combat zone. And so the base had more aircraft because they're flying the Overwatches. That's why they needed more maintenance people. We actually had a tent city there. And I lucked out. I had stripes, so we lived in a building called the Crack House. We actually had a real barracks, but it had been burned out. Still had soot marks, but it was still inside, climate controlled, and the door locked. So you know that's an advantage for having rank. Once again in Turkey, long weekend comes up. We're going to put together a tour to the coast, Mediterranean coast, which is about 18 hours by bus away. And at the first bus stop, half of each bus went to the other. One bus was for partying, and the other bus was us old geezers who were there just to enjoy ourselves. And we get to the Turkish town, and I'm hearing Deutsch being spoken. Now, I don't speak German, but I parrot the language, and oh, it's a German beach town. Hey, this is wonderful. And I went on an archaeology dig. I visited some historical sites. You know, I swam in the Mediterranean. You know, but yeah, you got a 5-day weekend? Yes, we'll put together a trip for you and let you do these things. So there's always opportunities to.
All right. So now you do that for 4 months, you go back to Barksdale and then get discharged eventually?
Yes.
Okay.
And guess what my reward was to myself? I got on my bicycle and rode across the United States. I took 3 months and took a bicycle tour from Washington State to Gloucester, Massachusetts. I took 12 weeks and rode my bike across the United States with a tour group, and then I started job hunting from there.
All right. What kind of job did you wind up with?
Believe it or not, after 1.5 years of working through temporary agencies, and everybody that the peer group saying you're retired from the military, you're going to flounder in jobs, CSX Transportation hired me because guess what? I'm an Vietnam era vet, and they got credits for hiring Vietnam era vets 20 years after the event. So I became a 25-year career at CSX. I started out as a conductor, then became an engineer. Worked out of Grand Rapids, Canada, Grand Rapids, Chicago, several other locations. Now I will say this about both my military and railroad career. I have 0 critical incidences. My 20 years in the military had no violence,
Mm-hmm.
okay? None directed at me, me directing no violence. Okay, so there's no violence, there's no story of the heroic airman running across the field. And as a locomotive engineer, a 25-year career should have been 7 to 8 fatalities statistic-wise, and I have no what's considered critical incidences. Yes, I have hit cars, but we have not injured people,
You haven't killed anybody.
Right, yes, and other critical incidences. So I've been very lucky in life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said I had a boring military career. Looking back at it, seeing now on the railroad, we would get Iraq War started in 2000, and, veterans coming back. And on the train, you don't talk about sex, religion, or politics. You don't want to get arguments
Mm-hmm.
going. Critical incidences are not brought up either. You never bring that up unless that person.
Mm-hmm.
So we got individuals from Iraq who definitely have post-traumatic stress disorder, but it was never brought up because we don't talk about it, but they do. I had one individual on the railroad, very sharp individual, 25 years in the Marine Corps, and he got caught in an IED and injured, but still discharged after 25 years. And he was told, if you're not in combat, not firing your weapon, it doesn't count. Okay, now remember, different rules, different times. So as a veteran myself, and I'm a 10% disabled vet, okay, just little minor things. I said, couldn't come out and said, have you applied? But I was able to coach him over the course of a year to get him to apply to VA, to just see what VA can do for him. Mm-hmm. And they have basically 100% disabled him over the course of a couple years. But you can't come up and tell somebody, you need to go to the VA, mm-hmm. but you can coach and, the best compliment I got, though, being on the railroad is from the wives. You get a phone call 2 hours before you go to work, anytime, day or night. You get a phone call, you acknowledge it, and go. And usually the wife is there. And they'll say, who are you going with? And if the person replied, I got engineer Hadding today, the wife would go, you're coming home safe. The wife knew, I don't have any problems with that person. So that was the ultimate compliment, too.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you look back now across your military career. Yeah. Overall, what do you think you took out of it, or what did you learn from it?
Oh, good. I learned that a rigid method doesn't always work. For example, when I went in, it was either an honorable discharge or dishonorable discharge. And they've changed it to now a certificate of participation if you don't make it past 6 months. Mm-hmm. Why should your life be ruined, because you couldn't make it in a job? Yeah. So the high, absolute rules. The next thing is being flexible. I have a 4-year degree in business administration. I've got 3 associate's degrees because of the Air Force. And what do I end up doing? Driving a train. Nowhere off there. So being flexible in life. It is not for everybody. I will hands down go, it is not for everybody. I will hands down go. Unfortunately, I do not have the empathy for the post-traumatic stress disorder individual, and it's real. Okay, I kid you not, it's real because we experience on the railroad. But since it hasn't personally happened to me, I can't quite be as empathetic as I should be. But it's there because I've dealt with individuals on the railroad who every time you go past a crossing where they killed somebody, they're cringing and shaking, because of, a past event.
I'm not sure that's something most people even think about when they
how
think
lucky,
about a railroad.
but so how incredibly lucky I have been in life. Right time, right place, meeting the right people, being given experiences that are incredible. And even this right here, you didn't hear any stories of blood or glory or gory mm-hmm. because they're all anecdotal stories. And I'm happy for that.
All right. Well, for a boring career, it actually made for pretty interesting interviews. So thank you very much for
thank
coming
you.
in and sharing it today.
Yes.